Welcome back to the Sweat Elite podcast, or welcome to if it's the first time you're tuning in. Another episode of Training Talk with Luke and Matt. A couple of days after Sydney Marathon, I was down there watching Sydney live. Luke, you watched on the internet. What do you think?
Looked amazing. Honestly, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to think before because I really didn't know much about it. Like, obviously I know some people there, but the only person I know from there that's actually a runner is you. And like you haven't been living there. And so yeah, I've never really chatted to anyone about the Sydney Marathon, so I didn't know a whole lot going into it. Um, Looked amazing though. Looked obviously crazy hilly. As far as marathons go, and certainly world majors go. Now it's a world major, so that's obviously a big challenge. But it's cool the way it's winter there and like summer everywhere else. So it was like, it's weird, obviously seeing everyone in the arm sleeves and stuff like that. Weather looked unreal. Um, yeah, man. I'm not all in on getting the 7 stars now. That's not, I like the idea of doing them. I've done some of them and I want to do more of them, the majors, that is. But this one looks cool. I do actually really, after I watched it, I do want to do it now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was obviously there, as I said, and it was perfect weather, which obviously really
Yeah.
helped the vibes on the day. But everyone that I spoke to after the race said it was unbelievable. Like the crowd.
Yeah.
I was at about the 16, 28, and 35K mark, so about 10 miles, 18 miles, and 22 miles. There was a section down in the south called Moore Park. People listening from Australia would know where that is, especially if you're in Sydney. And you can get between those 3 points in, maybe 400 meters or less. So really easy to spectate from, which is great. And you could even go to the about 1K mark and get a train from there directly to the 16K mark and still make it in terms of seeing the start and then seeing the leaders go through. So 4 points on the course you can easily get to without a problem. So really good for spectating. And everyone I
Mm.
spoke to afterwards, and there was a lows. I coached quite a few people that raced as well. They all said it was unbelievable in terms of just the way that it was, managed and just the crowd support and all that. So yeah, unreal event. Kipchoge obviously was. I asked you what. I think we had a little chat beforehand what we thought he'd come. I think you said he wouldn't make the top 10. I thought he'd come about sixth or seventh, so he was sort of in the middle of that at ninth. What do you think about Special
No,
K? You reckon he's got a few more wins in him, or do you reckon he's done?
no, I said exactly what happened. If you go back to the text, I said he'll barely break the top 10.
You did say that.
Yeah, and he came ninth. I just knew, like, because for some reason, I don't know why, he can't run a hilly marathon,
No.
like nowhere near his potential anyway. Um, Weird. I don't know why. Um, and then he's just, he's on the tail end of his career now, so it's going to be harder, and these lads just keep showing up out of the woodwork from Ethiopia and Kenya, just like smashing sub 205s like on a bad day usually. Um, and so it's yeah, I don't see him. He's definitely not going to win another major ever again.
Mm.
He might win some other races here and there. Probably not though. I don't know. I don't know how many more marathons he really has in him, especially given his track record of how he spaces out his marathons so much. He does at most, doesn't he usually do like two a year?
Mm. Yeah, I don't think he normally
Yeah,
does more than that.
definitely doesn't do more, yeah. And sometimes less. So yeah, he probably won't win another one again. I definitely don't think he'll win another major again. It was cool. It's cool to see him out there, and it was interesting because we were texting at the time, and obviously I'm watching the live feed, and you're not. You're out there, and so you were asking like, "Oh, how's he going? This, that, and the other." And when he came in, like at what do you run, like 209 or something like that, 208,
208.
209, yeah, 208, and finished ninth. Um, he looked grand. Like, remember when he had a bad, this is all relatively speaking for his standards, a bad Boston, and he looked in bits. He looked like he had just been like hit by a train. And then obviously the Paris Marathon, he actually had the DNF. It doesn't get worse than that.
At the Olympics.
Um, yeah, yeah. Paris, sorry, that's what I meant. Paris Olympics marathon. Um, but this one he looked grand. Like he went through and his usual big smile and he wasn't really limping or and I was like, that was kind of weird. So it's almost like he knew after a while, like 20 or 25K, whenever he broke away from that, there was like a pack of 7 or 8 and he broke away. I think it was like around 25 or 30K, maybe a bit later. And it was almost just like it was just like he knew, he was like, I don't have this in me anymore, in a sense. It was just like, I'm gonna kick on strong, like a top 10 finish at a world major is amazing. Of course. But by his standards, I think it was just more like, yeah, let's just finish this out. And then I'm sure, doesn't you would know this better than me. He was getting, what'd you say? He was getting like 1 million Australian dollars to show. And don't you
That's
only
the
get that?
rumors.
Yeah, don't you only get that money if you finish as well?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't think anyone knows for sure unless, you're part of the NN running team. But I've heard from a few different people that it was $1 million, which is about 640,000 US dollars, or about
Yeah,
600,000 euros, or about
yeah.
550,000 pounds, depending where we got listeners all over the world.
Keep going.
So
Yeah.
yeah, which other currencies go to?
What's it in
Um,
yen?
oh, geez, I don't want to know. Let's not go there.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
I think it's yeah. So obviously decent prize money. We have no idea if that if he's supposed to finish or not. I assume probably yes, but no clue. And that's probably just the money to be given to him by the event. I'm sure there's other little bits and pieces that come from that from other brands and endorsement
Yeah.
deals. So yeah, yeah, big money.
And
Sifan
that's
Hassan. Oh, yeah, here you go.
Yeah, yeah, but before we move on from that, that's sick. That's amazing. When
Mm.
you told me that, I was like, that is all like I love that, because I telling you, man, since I really got into running, there's nothing I hate more in running. I hate it more than I hear about the cheating stories even. There's nothing I hate more than hearing like some amazing runner just smashing it and then you find out what they get paid. Like it's so frustrating. Like the way they get paid, like so little compared to, and I get it. Like I get it. Like I'm sure there's someone listening going, oh, it's a viewer's sport. It all has to do with there's not enough people watching, blah, blah. I get it. It's just so frustrating when you look at these, the best of the best. And, obviously you do wish they were making more. So to hear if that's true, hopefully it's true that he made that much, like well deserved. And that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. It is very small money when you compare it to other sports. At least most other
Of
sports that have the
course.
reach and the interest
Yeah.
that running does. Running, the participation, numbers in running are just massive, especially nowadays. And $1 million Australian is actually pretty small compared to most other sports when it comes to
Right.
yeah. Mm.
But comparatively speaking and relatively speaking, for runners, it's
Oh yeah, it's huge.
good, yeah. And the way that keeps happening, like that trend that's happening now for the top runners at the majors, like I love it. I love that they're
Mm.
paying them relatively big bucks. But yeah, sorry, Hassan, yeah, man, she's a beast. I love watching her. She's such a beast. Fastest time ever on Australian soil by a woman, right?
Savannah Zand, yes. The men's was
Yeah, that
also
was.
the fastest time ever on Australian soil, 206.0 something, oh
Oh,
six
you're
or oh
right.
05.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
He just got under, right? It was
Yeah.
like I think got it really close. Um
Because the
did
Sydney
was
course is much slower than the Gold Coast Marathon course. But the Gold
yeah.
Coast Marathon course doesn't typically attract the very top guys because the prize money and the appearance fees are not nowhere near as high.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that 206, it's got to be worth, we always do this and who knows how accurate we are, but that's got to be worth a 203 at least or a 202 on a flat fast course.
Yeah, you would think, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
That was awesome. But no, watching Savannah San was so cool. Like there was a point, it all kind of blurs, but it was towards the end. It was definitely in the last like somewhere between the last 8K and 5K. And she was like breaking her pacer. Like her
Mm.
pacer was dying trying to keep up with her. And it got to a stage where there's like an aggressive downhill before another like and you could see the uphill. It was like, oh, it looked miserable. But she was like flying down the downhill and the pacer was like his form was like all over the place, trying to keep up with her down the downhill. And she was just like, I don't care anymore. Like, your job's done. Like, you're disposable, go away. And she just she just went. Like, it's cool. And then like her form, again, it kind of takes us back to yesterday. Like, her form, especially in the last, like, it just goes out the window. Like, she does not care about her form at all. Like, it's just she goes straight to her arms, kind of robotic. And like her gait, like the way her legs move, it just looks really weird. But when she gets into that form, like, oh man, she's kicking on here,
Yeah.
and that's cool. I love watching her. No, it's badass.
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome events. Hopefully do it one day. You keen to do it one day?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was saying. I did want to ask you though, because I was watching, and then the Australian commentators were on. It was on Flow Track, and they had, I guess, the local news. Just they had that in. And so they started talking about the three Australian women. Who was the top
Mm.
Australian woman again? What was her name?
Leanne sorry, I'm butchering her first surname. Starts with a P. Yeah, I should know that.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And then it
then
was Jess Stenson and then Lisa
Jess
Waitman.
Stenson and Waitman, right?
Yeah.
And they all came in at the end and they were like, all hugging and stuff. But apparently I missed it at the beginning. Apparently, I know you've told me briefly, but you would obviously speak on this more when I bring it up now. Like, there was like a whole load of drama. I know you talked about it before. And then like on the line, they were saying they kind of had a bit of a moment. They were like, let's just put the drama aside and just have a fun race. And they're all crying and they're hugging. And the commentators are like, oh, this is good to see finally. Like, kind of, yeah. I was like, man, I kind of like, because I love reality TV shows. So I was like, oh man, this is like the best of both worlds. This is like
Yeah.
running and a bit of drama, but they weren't explaining it so much. So like, yeah, what was going on there?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I apologize for butchering it. Leanne Pompiani, I believe is how you pronounce her name, and I could be slightly off with
Yeah.
that. So she actually didn't have much to do with the drama last year. It was around the other two, Jess Stenson and Lisa Waitman. So there was a
All
very
right.
tough selection call for the Olympic Games in the marathon, where basically four girls qualified well and truly. I think it was actually, it might have been more, but four were very, very close to each other. And Lisa didn't get selected when she probably should have. Jess ended up running very, very well at the Olympics, so she sort of confirmed that she was a good choice. But there was a bit of a dispute around the time where the selection happened around who should have been picked, Jess or Lisa. And yeah, Lisa, yeah, there was a bit of controversy there. So I don't think they'd seen each other or spoken to each other since. So they
Oh,
saw
yeah.
each other at the end and had a bit of a chat. And yeah, it was all over the news in Australia as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I could tell. I could tell it was big because when people were coming to the line, it was like, oh, this is awesome. This is so and so. They were on the three of them, but especially Lisa and Jess for ages,
Yeah.
like at the end of it, like it was so long. So I knew something was up. But Jess Stenson, I guess she just, not just, but she had a baby like not so long ago, right?
Mm.
I think that
Yeah.
was a big part of it. Man, she looked like she was going to die at the end of the race.
Yeah, I
And I
saw
was,
that. She
oh
had
my
really bad
God.
cramping in her quads.
Yeah. And she could have easily just like laid down and just like, but she was like fighting it so hard. She was like, I'm not going to lie down. And
Yeah.
it was like a baby deer on ice. It was like crazy. It was like, man, please lie down. It was like, oh, it's painful to watch.
Yeah. Good moments. Yeah. So we have seven good questions this week coming from the different socials. First one relating directly to Luke's double threshold, which he has now wrapped up for his training block, 6 weeks out from Chicago as of yesterday, 2 days ago in Australia. And then six more questions, just general questions about training and racing, mostly to do with the marathon. But Luke, I like the first one. Came through email from Thomas Pooley. On Luke's Strava, I saw he's done his last double threshold of the block. I was a bit surprised to see that too. I thought you were going to do a few more weeks, but we'll hear more from you in a minute about what your plan is there. I wondered in, say, a 15-week block, when would you recommend starting and finishing double threshold training? And what will replace those now Luke has finished leading up to race day, presuming someone has had double threshold experience and can tolerate the load, etc.
Yep. So I kind of briefly touched on this last week, but I'll get into it in depth here. And I'm glad it was asked. So I'm looking at Chicago essentially from when I finished my 5K up until Chicago, which is round about a 12-week build for me, right? So the way I'm looking at it is 6 weeks, the first 6 weeks with the double threshold. And that's it. I did 6 weeks of double threshold. So now the last 6 weeks, what I'm going to do is 4 weeks of just real marathon specificity, building it up, and then the 2 weeks of taper, right?
Mhm.
So the purpose of front loading it like that, like I talked about before, is because essentially what I was saying before, just building this massive engine. And like I saw it before, the term talks about widening your aerobic funnel before narrowing it down to marathon work, right? So you look at your, like your funnel, right? For those on the YouTube can see me doing the funnel thing with my hands. But yeah, that's your funnel, right? And the idea of double threshold is you just keep building it, building it, building it, widening it, and more, more, and more. And then that's so wide and your engine is so big that then you can take all that fitness, that strength, that endurance, and then start to really focus and narrow down to the marathon work, you know? And that's the whole idea. Because the threshold work and double threshold specifically is fantastic, right? There's so much that it can do. But for me, maybe people would disagree with this. I don't care if it's 5K you're doing it for, like Jakob, he does it for the 5K and the 1500 or whatever. If you're doing it like that badass Swedish guy, what's his name, Algren or whatever, he keeps breaking
Andreas
records.
Elgrim. Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing it more so for the bigger stuff, half marathons and 10Ks and all that stuff, or marathons. That's not the specificity for anyone, I feel like, the double threshold. That's not specific at all. The idea for that is you're doing this, it's a really like dense way to improve, pardon me, that lactate clearance, the buffering, the sustainable aerobic power. That's the idea, right? You're building, 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 pushing that threshold line, buffering the lactate, clearing it out, and then going, 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 right? And that's so valuable for so many other races, but it's not the thing in and of itself. So you get it to a certain level, and then you take that fitness, and then you specify, then you get specific with whatever it is. Mine's a bit different because I'm going the opposite way, which I think in my mind should be way easier because technically lactate threshold should be faster and or harder than marathon pace
Oh
and
yeah, for
effort.
everyone. Yeah.
Right. No, that's what I mean. I mean, for me, using it in a marathon build versus a 5K or a 10K, those guys go the opposite way. They get super fit, super big engine, and then they rip fast stuff. Versus me, I've been ripping, to me, lactate threshold kind of is ripping, doing half marathon stuff. And then I go to marathon specific stuff. It should be so much easier. And so that I feel like that should make sense, right? Big engine, big funnel. The reason I'm doing 6 and 6 though, why I'm not prolonging it now, is because for the first 6 weeks, I've had, sub threshold Tuesday, double threshold Thursday, marathon long run and marathon specific work Saturday, right? 3 big days in a 6 day week. I take a day off every, so that's like, it's a lot. So when I'm showing up to the long run on the weekend, I'm pretty trashed. My body's pretty beat up. I can feel I'm doing a double. I go to bed or arrive home at like 9:30, 10 p.m. after having like a 24, 25 mile day with 11 miles of work. I take a Friday off and then I smash a long run on a Saturday morning. Like that's pretty close, right?
Mm.
So I'm not able to give everything I can in those long runs. And this will bleed into a question later as well. I don't want to get into it too much. But for a marathon, I feel like this is giving away my answer for the other question. But for me, I think a lot of people would agree with me, and I bet I'd be willing to bet you'll agree with me. The most important thing, if you have to pick one thing for a marathon build, is the long run, specifically the marathon specific long run, with your marathon work in the later weeks. And I'm getting to those later weeks. So I'm at a stage now where I'm fit enough where I can do the work and handle really big, tough grueling marathon specific long runs. I've got that fitness, but now I need to be as sharp and as fresh as anyone can be on a 100-mile week without the double threshold monkey kind of, so to speak, on my back from the whole Thursday, if that makes sense. So now is time to take that big funnel, specify it, narrow it down, and then start smashing those long runs, the 2 by 5 miles, 2 by 10K, 4 by 5K, marathon specific, whatever it is. Everyone knows those big ones. And that's the goal, you know. I hope that, and then also, you know, focusing on the other things and my fueling and all that good stuff. And so yeah, I feel like that was a lot. I could probably even speak to it more. I've been so fascinated by it. I was so adverse to it. Like when Mark and Matt and all those guys were doing it for marathons, I was like, no, I just wouldn't be for me, blah, blah. But now that I've done it for the 6 weeks, I'm so fascinated by it and I really have been loving it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you explained that very well. I guess the one part of the question that you could expand upon a little bit is what will replace those now Luke has finished leading up to race day? You know, the long run's
Sorry.
going to be there. That's going to be more at marathon, well, depending on the weather, but you know, longer stints at marathon effort, marathon goal pace. What does the middle of the week look like?
Yeah, sorry. So everything else stays the same. It's still sub-threshold Tuesday, marathon specific work on the Saturday that I just waffled on for ages about. On the Thursday, which was double T day, I'll still take the Friday off for the long run. I'll go back to what I did before, like a medium long run, like 17, 18 miles and hill sprints at the end.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So instead of doing the hill sprints, which I've actually been liking, doing the hill sprints at the end of my workout on Tuesday, I'm going to go back to what I did before, maybe with the hill sprint. I'm going to do the hill sprints no matter what, but I'm still messing with the idea if I want to keep them on a workout day or put them at the end of my medium long run on Thursday.
I personally think you're better off putting them on Thursday after your medium long run.
So I'm more fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've done it before and it never hurt me on the long run. So yeah, I think I'll do that then.
Mm. And so your Tuesday workout will remain roughly, you've been doing roughly 5 or 6 miles, you know, 8 to 10K worth of work at sub threshold. Is that what you'll continue to do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, keep doing big. Now I'll do more. I'll do at least 7 to 8, maybe 9 miles of, yeah, threshold and sub-threshold work on the Tuesday still. Yeah.
Mm. Nice. Cool. Well, hope that answers your question, Thomas. Thanks for sending in. Sam O'Connor asks, these are much more broad, basic questions I've been saving for this week because they're probably questions that you might have heard before if you've been listening to lots of different content. But we'll give you our answers to these. How do you mentally bounce back after a tough race or training run? By Sam O'Connor. Can I have a go at that
Do you
first?
want? Yeah, I can. It's just I wasn't sure if you were sick of listening to my voice because I was just waffling there for ages.
Oh,
But
okay, okay, I can go. I could go. Well, look, I mean, this is a very common, thing to happen to people, especially during the middle of a marathon block. I think if you're training well otherwise and you have well, there's sort of two questions in here, a tough race and a tough training run. I think they're
yeah,
quite different because a training run, if you have a bad workout and you're in the middle of training quite well, I think it's really important to zoom out and to step back to get home, take it, don't get too worked up about it. I think you have to start to be a little bit concerned about things once you do 3 or 4 bad workouts in a row where you've clearly digressed and gone backwards a little bit. You have to sort of reassess as to what it is. It might be a health issue. It might be just a conditions issue. But if you've had it, I pretty regularly have one-off bad training runs in a cycle, whether it's just once every month or once every 4 or 5 weeks. And typically it just happens once and that's it. And if that's the case, that's just normal. I think that's just completely normal. And
yep,
you got to zoom out. You got to make sure you're not overthinking it. I coach people that regularly sort of get quite concerned about one bad workout and think they've lost fitness. That's impossible, especially if you've been doing very, very consistent volume for a long period of time. Oftentimes, you've just maybe overdone it a little bit in training, and maybe you're outside, external factors in life around, whether you've got kids or a job and you've been sitting down too much. Like those all those small things can make a big difference to a workout that goes badly. So I think that's important. A tough race is different. I think firstly, it's important to understand that if you're talking about the marathon, I think I've really noticed that roughly one in somewhere between two and three marathons go well. And so 33 to 50% of the time a marathon will go well, and then 50% to 66% of the time it won't go very well. That's just
When
across the board. Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you're at that point where you've done so much running and training and racing where you're at your peak, you know.
Mm,
Of course, when you're new and you're like PB, 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 like that's very different,
that's
you
very different.
know. Yeah, but when you're at especially your stage, your level, then yeah, couldn't agree more with that last part. It's more often than not they go wrong than they go
Yeah.
right.
It's funny because people used to ask me this a few years ago when Kipchoge just had back to back to back to back, world records, 201, 202 win. And I used to joke and say, Kipchoge is one of the only people in the world that I've noticed that does better than this. He basically runs well almost 100% of the time. But since then, he's had probably the same rate as what I'm talking about. One in every two races don't go well for him, or even more, because he had the
Yeah,
Boston 2 years ago, then the Olympics, and then Sydney. And maybe Sydney went okay for him. I don't know, but he came ninth, and for a world record holder and a Olympic champion, I guess he probably wanted to do better. So yeah, now he's in the regular category of running roughly well every two or three races, and I think that's the case for most people. And so you have to understand if you have a marathon that doesn't go to plan and you run a couple of minutes off what you hope for. Once again, you've got to zoom out and go, how does this compare to the regular person? And I think the regular person doesn't hit their goal or doesn't have a perfect race roughly one in every two or three. It's a bit
yeah,
different when it gets down to 5 or 10K, I think. But, backing up from a difficult training rate, a difficult race where it doesn't go to plan is not easy, especially when you put in so much training, you put in so much work, you've sacrificed a whole lot of stuff. It's not easy. I've had to deal with that many, many times. And it's just, it's about, taking a break. I think you can be disappointed for 24 hours. There's this old school saying that you can be pissed off for 24 hours and just try and move on and learn from
yes,
what might have gone wrong. But so often, I think one thing that people often overlook is the conditions in races. And a lot of people don't do as well as they hope for. They run 1 minute off what they hope for in a half marathon, and they don't realize that running in 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius with 90% humidity is going to be a few minutes slower than normal. And they don't even realize that. They don't even take that into account. I think that's a big deal. But yeah,
yeah.
what do you think?
Man, everything you're saying, literally like spot on. I was gonna like literally say something basically almost identical to what you were saying. The last part you're talking about, you know, the last part you were talking about making sure you're looking at um whether it's the heat or this, that, and the other. Of course, that's so important. Like, and I think that goes to kind of reframing, whether it's the training session or the race. It's the same thing, kind of reframing that effort in terms of and how you're labeling it in terms of like bad and good and stuff like that. And I know this is cheesy, and it is, but I like it. I got it from do you ever see that show Ted Lasso?
No, it's on my list of things to watch
Man,
though. My mum just
you need
watched
to
it. She
watch
said it
it.
was really good.
You would love that show. You would love
Yeah.
that show. So good, especially the first season. And he says something in there about, the different, I can't remember exactly specifically, but it stuck with me, like the main message. It has to do with the difference between, judgment and curiosity, right?
Mm.
And meaning like this is external, people judging him instead of being curious about him, right? And so he's always like that as a coach. Instead of judging these players, he wants to be curious about them. And then you can do that internally too, especially with training and races. Because how often are we judgmental to ourselves? Like, man, you did this wrong. You did that wrong. You're an idiot. Like, why did you do this? Blah, blah. Instead of seriously, like being curious, like, why did this happen? How did that happen? And like really, really reflecting with more of a curious mind than a judgmental mind for yourself. And if you're able to like make those little switches for yourself, because running and individual sports like that, boxing can be the same, martial arts, all those individual sports instead of team sports, it's so, so much easier to be so judgmental on yourself and so hard on yourself. Like, I've been in so many sports. Runners are the most self-critical athletes ever I've ever come across in any sport. Like, it's
Why do you think that
insane.
is?
It has to do with the individuality of it. There's no one else to blame. You have to blame yourself. Um, and I think, especially runners that I know and runners like you and, like high level runners, there's just so much pressure that they put on themselves, myself included. It gets to a stage where it's like, and I think with running too, it's like, especially when you're at the level that you're at, and a lot of the guys that I know that I run with and train with, it's like you're so much closer to a really good level than any other sport. If you're playing soccer in like a rec league or playing basketball in a rec league or whatever, you're a billion million miles away from any kind of half decent, like you just are. Whereas running, you're like on the line with pros. You're beating some pros on some given days for some reason other than another. Like you're definitely beating sub elites. There's a possibility of things like OTQs. You can go to Olympic trials. There's so much more there at stake and could possibly be. I think that's part of it. But I really think it's the individuality aspect of it. Like runners are just like so hard on themselves because they've no one else to blame.
Hmm.
And we just put so much into it. It's like work and your life outside of running is like cool, but it's like this is it. Running is all I have. And that goes to my other point that will help this person asking the question is separating your self-worth from your performance is a massive thing. Like do all the things you said, zooming out is important, reframing the mindset and the mentality, learning the 24-hour rule, fantastic rule. I really, really do try my best to do a good job at that with everything in my life. You can be sad, you can be upset, you can be mad, but give yourself a day and then learn from it and then get the fuck over it, you know? But separating your self-worth from that, like you really have to. You really have to like zoom out because at the end of the day, most people listening to this, the people that are going to be there to pat you on the back, say well done, give you a hug at the finish line, and or console you if things go well, I guarantee you, so many of those people don't even care about running
Hmm.
at all. You know, so many people. Of course, we'll have people that do, but there's so many people in your life that are going to be there for you, care for you, all that stuff that really don't care about running at all, and they're only there because of you, because of how much they like you, love you, care for you, whatever it is. And so it's really good when you have a bad. This is more specific to a bad race. If you think things are going to kind of separate yourself from that and realize, how many other important things you have going on for you, and like and kind of focusing on that for a while you can kind of reframe the other things and reflect and then bounce back. And yeah, I could go on for ages about that, but I think I think you've hit the nail on the head. And with everything else there, yeah.
All right, moving on to the next one. Deborah76_1 asks, what's one workout you think is essential for marathon success? Very simple one.
Yeah.
Look, there's a lot, but there's no way you're running a good marathon without a good long run. And you touched on this before. I think doing different types of long runs as well, doing the steady state long runs, which you've been banking plenty of, where you're running at that sort of 75 to 80% effort, not quite an easy run, not quite a marathon effort run. I think banking a lot of them early on in the block, especially. And if you're not very experienced, maybe even doing them every other week, I program that to many people that I coach every second week, these sort of steady state long runs. And then I think the most important type of workout, especially when you're getting 2 weeks to 6 weeks out, which is what you were talking about, how you're about to transition to this, is the long runs that have marathon effort or marathon pace. Ideally, a bit of both. Depends, if you're in a place where the conditions are pretty good all the time and they're going to be pretty close to race day conditions, you can do marathon pace work and training. But if not, and you're somewhere like Luke is, and it's very warm, even still in start of September, you're going to have to run a little bit off that goal pace. But really making sure that you're practicing running fast on tired legs at the end of long runs. We're talking about 30K or more, 18, 19 miles or more, where some of those miles at the back end of that run are marathon effort or far or marathon pace. I think that's the most important type of training session for a marathon runner. And I will never forget last year when I ran Boston Marathon. I paced Eric Floberg to 2:38, and I was relatively fit at the time, not super fit, over sort of 3K, 5K, but I wasn't really doing any long runs at the time. And I never planned to run Boston hard or anything. I just had the entry and was just going to help out a friend. And I majorly struggled after 30K because I had not done anything over 15 miles for, I think it was like 4 months, 5 months. And this was at 2:38 pace. And at the time, my best was 2:20. And I was hoping to run, 2:18, 2:17 in the next few months. And because I hadn't done anything over 15 miles, my 5K, 10K fitness only took me so far. And I started massively cramping up around 22, 23 miles, 35, 36, I think 37K. I had to stop and basically walk it in. Even though aerobically I was okay, my muscles and body just couldn't do it. Even though I was
Yeah.
running at almost 10 minutes, almost 20 minutes slower than my personal best pace. So just goes to show how important those long runs are. So anything to add to that, Luke? I know I've probably covered the main.
No, yeah, that's it. You nailed it. Couldn't agree more. That's the big one. And I think, you nailed everything there in terms of specificity. That's important. There's nothing like, the demands of a 26.2 miler, like that practicing long sustained effort. Um, and then that durability that you were talking about for your muscles, getting your muscles and your ligaments ready. But the one thing that I think I'd almost put this at the top of it, when you get a few really, really good long runs, especially with that marathon specific work, what it does for your confidence is unbelievable. There's nothing else. You can smash as many fast mile repeats, rip crazy fast 400s with little rest, all that stuff. Doesn't matter what you do on the track for all those workouts. There's nothing that will get you more confidence than smashing a long run with marathon specific work. Like you do that, the feeling after it, and there can be no one around in the park or the wherever it is you just smashed it, and you'll feel like you just won like a world major, like
Okay.
when you smash some of those, and you're just like, man, I cannot wait for this marathon. I'm so ready. There's nothing that will replace that. And so I think that's one of the main reasons why that marathon specific long run is so good and would be put at number one on that list.
Hmm. Matt Palmer asks, what's your mental strategy for pushing through the toughest miles in the race? Miles 18 to 22. Oh, I would argue the toughest miles come after 22, but anyway, they're still pretty tough miles
Yeah,
around the
yeah,
18 to
yeah.
22. That's 30K to 35K roughly, or not, just before 30K. It comes 18 miles. What do you do, Luke? What do you think about when you're about to go through the difficult part of the marathon?
Yeah, when I go through the wall barrier, the wall miles, whatever you want to call it, I do a few things. So when I'm getting there, what helps me, obviously I do miles because I'm in the US instead of kilometers. When I get to 20 miles, 20, and it looks at that, like that's it. Like mentally for me, when I see the two, that's it.
You're
Like I'm
finished.
like, oh, that's it. I'm finished. I swear to God, I do that little trick on my mind. I'm like, that's it. Like the rest are just little numbers, 21, 22. That's nothing. That's absolutely nothing. You're there. You've made it 20. So that's a big mental goal for me. Seeing 20 on my watch. Do that a lot. The other one that I do when I get into that last 10K, certainly the last 5K, is I I focus on like little cues. So like if I go through and something feels hard, then for a while I'll be like, okay, your form is going to be shit here. Chest out, hips out, lift your knees a bit, and don't look at pace for a while. Focus on your form, get your form going again. So I'll do that sometimes. That helps me a lot. That gets me going. Um, Another one is definitely, and this should help everyone, especially in the later miles, just start trying to catch people, you know.
Mm.
And if you're at that stage, and I've been there, where there's just no way, you know, you've gone a certain pace and the pace that everyone else is around you, you're not going to catch them, then just don't be caught. If it, you know, one way or the other, you catch people and then just start, you know, that's obviously a fantastic place for people, right? Start counting them off like boom, one person, boom, two people. Start counting them off. That's great for your confidence. But if it's the other way, just have a look behind you every now and again. Don't get freaked out, but have a look behind you. If someone's coming close, be like, all right, I'm going to stick with this guy for a while. Forget about the pace. And stick with him for a bit. Stick with him for a bit. It's going to hurt and he's going to go eventually. People are like, all right, he's gone. I stuck with him for a bit. That's nice. Next thing you know, that's half a mile gone or something, you know? And just little things like that. And just, I don't know, stuff like that always helps me. And there's so much more, but I think those would be the main ones for me.
Mm. In addition to that, I think everything you said is great. I think in addition to that, what I often think about in the final stages is I'll never forget. I thought about this in Chicago last year when I realized I had about 30 minutes to go. I was at about the 1 hour 50 mark of my watch. And I remember thinking to myself, I've just got a 30-minute tempo run to go. I've done so
Yeah,
many 30-minute tempo runs, 30-minute tempo run to go. And I often try and break it down like that. And I oftentimes think if it's a race that's going decently well and you've got, 8K to go, I think, okay, it's only just less than 30 minutes. Like I've done so many workouts that are much longer than this. After this, I'm going to have many months where I can recover and just think about how it went. But just 30 minutes you can get through. Just really trying to think about how much time you have left and how many
yeah.
times you've been through the hurt locker for that long before. I think that's really useful as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I think that's what's so important about your training too. Like, for me, the marathon really is done, raced in a sense. You don't take this the wrong way, in your training. Like, you should show up on the line just so ready. And you can take, that's why I think it's important, not all the time, but every now and again, to really put yourself in a bit of hurt in training.
Mm.
You know, push yourself through those so you can use that. You know, you can be like, man, I'm hurting, but I've been here before. I've done this before, so I can do it again, no problem. Like, I really do think it's important to have a few, again, not a lot, really hands-on knees workouts where you've just buried it. Um, and just so you can feel it again. And then I thought about this when you were saying that. I wouldn't recommend loads of people, but this is just me. There's so many times like towards the end of a race where I genuinely feel like I might die, like literally die, because I'm pushing so hard. And I just think to myself, like, fuck it, just do it. It's better to just die than to just quit. Like, imagine you quit. Like that would be so pathetic. But if you die, that's kind of like cooler almost. And I know that's really unhealthy, but I just have that mindset in a race because I know I'm not going to die. But I just kind of switch my brain a little bit and be like, nah, this is way cooler. Like just like hurting like this and just like falling apart than to just like quit. And so like when I have those quitting moments, I think of shit like that. I don't know if that'll work for everyone, but it kind of works for me sometimes.
I like it. Brett Preston asks, have you experienced any moments in a marathon when you almost gave up but kept going?
Yeah, there you go. I feel like I kind of answered that one. No, that happens to me all the time. Like I think every marathon. Um, and I've said it a couple times in the race, and this always stuck with me. Dublin Marathon, my second ever marathon, 2022 or 2023. I can't remember. I think 2022. Um, and I so unprepared for the hills. I thought it was going to be a flat course. It was very hilly. I did no hill training. My training was pretty bad anyway because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just ripping 20-mile PB attempted long runs every
Yeah.
week. Just, you know, bad training. And so I went out and the first half was miserable, the hills, everything. And there was a lad that caught me. He had all this kinesio tape on his knees, you know, a worn, torn runner. You could tell in his day. He was a good runner, but he was an older lad now. And I could just hear his feet just, you know, he had that kind of form where his feet just scraped the ground. And he caught me and he had a chat with me for a while. And he was like, I was like, what's your goal? What's your goal? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I'm gonna kick on here in a bit. He was like, but man, don't get discouraged. There's a lot of race left to race. And I don't mean that in a bad way. He was like, marathons are like there's peaks and valleys. Right now you're in a valley. He's like, I'm telling you, down the end of that road, there's a peak waiting for you. You just have to get through the valley and you can ride the peak again. And he was dead right. He kicked on, he dropped me, and I just gritted me teeth, was just hoping I'll feel better, you know, slow down a bit or whatever. And then I felt great again.
Yeah.
And then I kicked on. And sure enough, a few K later, I felt crappy again. And then I felt great again. But no, that mantra, whatever you want to call it, that always sticks in my mind. That the marathon really is a race of peaks and valleys. Like if you're feeling crappy at a given moment, you can always adjust. You can always get out of it. You can always find another peak. You just have to find a way. And that's what training's about too. You need to practice that in training too. Don't just if you're having a bad workout, don't just give up on the workout. Sometimes you have to be smart, but you don't want to do it all the time. You don't want to make it a habit. Sometimes you need to adjust and be like, okay, I'm going to do this instead. I'm going to do that instead, and just keep burying it. And you might still feel like shit, but you need to find a way out of it.
Hmm. I almost gave up in the middle of my PB, not in the middle of, sorry, around the 22-mile mark, that towards the end. I got a massive stitch in the run in Indianapolis last year when I ran 2:18. Right around 21 and a half miles, which has got to be 34K. I very rarely get stitches. In fact, I can't even remember the last time I got a stitch bar this race. And I got a massive stitch, lasted about 3.5 kilometers, just over 2 miles. And through the middle of that, I almost stopped. It was excruciating. It was so bad. And I just peaks and valleys. I was in a valley. I was struggling. And then sort of all of a sudden it went away. I have no idea why. I have no idea why I got it. I don't think
Oh
it was,
yeah,
it might have been overfueling. I did have a 1,000 gram carb day the day before. So I might have overdone it on that front. And then I think I had about 100 grams of carbs an hour. So it might have just been an overfueling thing. But yeah,
yeah,
I'll never forget that. I was on my watch passing 36K. I realized I was on pace at that point for 217 high, 218 low. And I couldn't handle the pain in my side. It was so rough. And
yeah,
I considered quitting every 5 seconds for about 2 minutes. And I just thought, get to the next marker, get to the next marker, get to the next mile marker. And then before I knew it, it was gone. I was like,
yeah,
wow, I'm back. I'm back. So
yeah.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
telling you,
And then I started cramping.
right on top of that peak, and then you're on a PB.
Yeah, but then about a mile down the road at 23 miles, I started cramping in my hamstrings. So it was a rough last 5 miles,
Another
but still
valley.
got through it. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'm telling you, man. Like everyone goes through it. It's really just about grinding through the valley and finding a way. I think that's it. It's not just grinding through it. It's not just like, okay, my pace is 5:30 per mile. And when you're in that valley, you're like, it has to be five, like find a way, like adjust it a bit, throw some water, whatever, like just find a way and be smart when you're doing it.
Mm.
And you'll get
Yep.
out of it.
Two more rapid fires before we transition over to the private podcast feed for the Shareholders Club. Aaron 998, how do you adapt your training plan for a marathon with extreme weather conditions like heat or cold? It's a good question for you, given that you've just done the bulk of your training in pretty extreme heat. Pretty simple answer to this, don't you think? Running to effort
Yeah,
as opposed to running to pace.
that's it. That's it. Just be smart. Um, do not do this like the way I'm training now is not the same way I trained for my Osaka build when it was 30 degrees and 40 degrees and 50 degrees at the warmest for most of the build. Very different runs, very different fueling, stopping way more for ice myself off, take my core temperature way down, changing, yep, from pace to effort, um, just all those things, and just being smart and just knowing you can't beat the weather. It's literally impossible. You're not stronger than the sun. You're not stronger than, whatever else the horrible condition is. So you need to respect it and adjust. Because trust me, I have been there where I thought I was stronger than the sun and I got cooked for like almost half, like a solid quarter of a year for sure. don't do it. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Lena SP1 asks, what's the ideal length of a marathon training cycle for you? Oh, she says 12, 16, or 20 weeks. Wow, that's very long. And why? Personally, for me, it's more like 8 weeks. I like to get into really good 5K, 10K shape 8 weeks out. Before I ran my best marathons last year. Yeah, 6 weeks marathon block, 2 weeks taper, basically. So that's an 8 week block. And that seems to work for me. But you got to start that 8 weeks out in very good 5, 10K shape. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Same
And
for you.
exact same, but just in case, I did want to say a couple things, just in case that person, because I read the question, I didn't read it specifically like that. I thought, so for the 12 weeks would be perfect for someone like Matt and myself. We have a stronger base, we're consistently doing at least 70, 80 miles a week, and all that good stuff, exactly what Matt said. 16 weeks would be more for most people, I would say. It's pretty good where you could do, like what I was saying, build your threshold up for 6 to 8 weeks, then get into some more long runs, take it easy. You could even have some down weeks, one or two here and there, and then get into it. So 16 weeks is good. 20 weeks is when you should look at and listen to, if you want to do 20 weeks, look at and listen to last week's podcast where we talked about being careful not to peak too soon. That can certainly happen in a 20-week cycle. And if you're doing that, do everything else we talked about. Big threshold build, big base build at the beginning. But then when you get into it, into your marathon stuff, maybe do it in a way where you do 3 or 4 weeks of solid work, 1 week down. 3 or 4 weeks of solid work, 1 week down. And do it like that. So you're not getting stale, you're not getting stagnant, and you're not falling off or peaking too soon. So yeah.
Good answer. Well, we'll transition now over to the second half of the podcast where Luke and I dive into our training weeks in detail, explain what we've done in training and why, what's coming up for us. Luke is just less than 6 weeks out from Chicago, where he hopes to break his personal best of 2:24.51. I am just getting back into somewhat reasonable shape. I was hoping to run a 5K race every 2 weeks, but given I was in Sydney last week, I wasn't able to do it, and I can't do it this weekend either because I'll be in Melbourne visiting family. So I'll do it the following week. But I'm rounding into shape. I feel like I could probably run somewhere around, I don't know, 17:30 to 18 minutes 5K now. So yeah, I started from complete scratch about 5 weeks ago, running a 21:20 5K. So we'll talk all about the training over on the Shareholders Club. You can join us over there for $10 a month or $99 a year at sweatelite.co/shareholders. Link is in the description. We really appreciate all you shareholders that access the private podcast feed every single week. Pretty easy to set up. But we will speak to you all on this channel next week. Thanks for listening in.